All right, this video is going to be creating the train drawing as we see right here. I did it in class, but I didn't have a recorded one that I could post for people to look at later. All right, so first off, let me move this stuff out of the way while I'm recording a little bit. So you do have to create the drawing tab. If you are starting with the very first sheet, you may not have this yet, and so it is going to be hitting this plus button for insert new element, and you're going to create a drawing. And this is going to be the only drawing tab we create. And if you go to our main file tab here, you should have downloaded and received in Canvas this LEFS title block. So we're going to choose that. And if you don't have that in your account, then you got to go to Canvas and get it. But we're going to get this and use that as our template. Okay. I'll open these menus here again in just a second, but right now I want to just emphasize again right away that this will be your only drawing tab when you do this. To add more pages, you will open this little sheet manager button on the side, and this is where you'll list all your sheets for the project, all your pages basically. And then to add those, you'll hit this button right here, insert sheet. So right now we only have one page, which is why it says it's sheet 1 of 1. But if we need, which we will, more sheets, we will click that, and you will see that now this sheet recognizes that it's not the only sheet in the project, that it's 1 of 2. And so we want to make sure that we are using this. If you just keep adding drawing tabs, it's kind of a mess in your project, as well as every single page says it's 1 of 1, and they don't really acknowledge that they are part of a set. So to insert a view, we come up here in the ribbon, there is an insert view tool. If you click that and then click insert again, you can then go choose what you want to bring in. So we're going to stay on the current doc. You could be bringing things from other documents. And we are trying to bring views of parts in. So we're going from the Part Studio versus where you could bring in views of assemblies. Okay. And we're wanting to document the train body. So I'm going to choose that. Now I had to decide what view that I wanted. I actually wanted, so this happens to be the front, not just by name, but by kind of layman's terms. But the view I want here is not this view. I want to show the side because I think that's the more descriptive view of the shape. And so I'm going to turn it so that what we think of the front of the train is going to be pointing to the right. So if I move my mouse, the whole thing moves, but I'm going to choose the left here, and that'll rotate the front, what we think of as the front, over to the right. Now I'm going to have to bring on quite a few more views. At this scale, this size, it's going to be way too big. So next I'm changing the scale here from 1 to 1 to 1/2. And then I'm going to place it kind of right here. So this is what we're going to call our front view. This is the single best descriptive orthographic view we have. So I'm going to place it right about here. Onshape is automatically switching to the project view tool. And we are going to project from that front view. We're going to go up for a top view. After projecting once, you do have to choose which view you want to project. And each time I'm projecting this one, so I have to select it again before I go left, and then place that. I'm going to select it again, go to the right, and then lastly, I'm going to give an isometric. So I'm going to select it one last time and go diagonally up and right, and that will give me my front, top, right isometric. Okay, now what Onshape calls left, top, back, etc., that is simply the names from the Part Studio based on how that part matches up with this cube, and there's really not a way to change and reset this face to call it something else. Just kind of be aware of that. That's where that's originating from. So if you ever want to know what named view you need, if you know what side you want to show, you can go back to your view cube, your Part Studio, and look at the view cube and kind of remember. All right, now the isometric, I'm going to turn off the project view tool. Let's go ahead and shade it by right clicking, going to the show hide, and then go show shaded. Okay, now for dimensioning this, we need to keep in mind that our goal is not to put a length or dimension on every last little point that you can think of or distance, but it's to give enough dimensions that we actually understand the size and shape of the object, and we have located things. So we do not need to locate something 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. And the mistake often is that students start over dimensioning because they don't really think about, did I locate something? Did I help know where that is? They just kind of start blindly putting dimensions on things. Okay. So keep that in mind. I do want to go ahead and add the center mark tool right away. You notice that there's little plus signs inside the holes, the smokestack hole, the axle holes, the hitch peg hole, and the cow catcher holes. So those were there automatically, but we also have this round feature right here. And so I want to place the center mark for the cylindrical form on the front. I have what I've been calling the engineer's window. I want to choose that and get the plus sign there. And then I also have this arc here, which I guess you could either see kind of on the top, right in the right view or the left view. We chose to put it here in the left view. The thing is, when you choose that, it's concentric to that hole, and so a plus sign didn't really appear. It's there, but we didn't see it because it's in the exact same spot. So keep that in mind, because we're going to add something later to make that more clear. Okay, so that is the end of adding our center marks. Another thing I'll show you right now is that often students accidentally dimension to these thinner lines that are showing up. And those thinner lines, you can maybe tell from the isometric better, we have all these rounded edges. Those thin lines are simply where the fillet kind of starts or stops. So this round over, they're called tangent edges. We can hide them. Even if we want to see them, we could at least hide them temporarily while we dimension, so you don't accidentally dimension to one of them. So if I hover over the view, so I get that box around it, I right click, there is an option in the menu called tangent edges, and right now it's on solid, but I can put it on hidden. And so how about I go ahead and hide these right now, and that'll help you to not make an accident. Okay. It also just maybe makes it a little cleaner to look at while we're working. Okay. With dimensioning, I often use my keyboard pressing D to turn that tool on and off. The three overall dimensions are important to give. The overall kind of length or width here. So I'm going to go from the most left side to the most right side. Now I pay attention to where I click. I knew that I wanted to pull this dimension to the top, so I didn't choose down here because I'm managing the extension line gap. So that extension line is going to run almost to where I select, but it's going to stop just short. It's going to keep that gap. I wanted this little white space here. And if I had chosen down here, this line would have run all the way down to here. Okay, so I'm trying to choose the highest segment or point on the side, the closest point or segment to the direction I'm going to pull that to manage those. So that gives me the overall width of the object, if I'm calling this width in here in the front view. The overall depth, you can't see in this how far from this side to the opposite side, but if we go to the top view or to the right view, we can see it. So either one, I'm looking at the one I've got on Canvas. I've got that on a monitor over to the side, so I'm going to recreate it the same way. Oop. What just happened? Okay, just closed dummy. So I had placed that dimension right here to show the overall depth and the overall height. Now that one's kind of a tricky one. It could be a touchy spot for some, but the highest point would be here, right? And this would be the lowest point. So this would be appropriate, okay, potentially. But because the top was this arc, we did it in a different way, and we did it the way we were given it originally. So I am going to go ahead and turn off the tool and delete that. Some would probably not like that I'm doing this, but I just thought it also would be kind of a learning thing for another detail. But you certainly could put that there if you have strong feelings. You want to show, no, I want to be able to read the overall height explicitly. Boom, there it is. But when we got it, we were given the dimension for the radius of this arc on top, right? So that sized that. That by itself doesn't tell us the height of the train, though, without us also knowing where the center of that arc is. And it wasn't very obvious to us, right? But we knew the center of that arc, this arc right here, was also concentric to that hole. So we picked up the regular old line tool and we drew a line from that arrow tip to the center mark here. to make that more explicitly clear. This acts as an extension line of that leader line, kind of guiding the eye to that point. Now, knowing that, and then coupled with knowing the height, kind of the location of this center mark from the bottom, together those two would help me know the height. Doesn't explicitly tell me right away without having to do a quick, little math to add those, but I do have the information of how tall it is. Okay, so that first covers the overall width, depth, and height of the train. From there, let's focus on one view at a time. So again, you could be looking at Canvas and seeing what we've got here, but I'm going to focus on this front view, and we'll maybe save the round things with the holes for end, but let's kind of go from the back forward and think about where are features that I would want to locate. So if you think of this as the engineer compartment, I would want to know from the back how far forward is this. So kind of locating, horizontally speaking, that feature. Okay. Moving along, I would want to locate those holes. I said I'd come back to them in a second. That in a second. I would want to locate this, but what is this? That's a smokestack hole. And we would generally want to locate or size things in the view where we can better see that. So even though I do see this feature, I will better understand it and know what's going on in this top view, and I don't need to locate it in both views. So I'm going to locate and size the smokestack hole in the top view later. Okay, the front of the train has already been understood, so that's actually it. Okay, so now let's go to the round things. I want to locate horizontally where the center of this radius is, right? And I've got to decide if I'm going to put that view up here or put it down here. And I had decided to put it in the top. So knowing that, I chose this segment or even that point, and then the center mark, and then dragged that up. Again, managing the extension gaps. Okay. Horizontally speaking, let's kind of keep going from front to back or back to front. So I'm kind of using the back of my train as like the baseline or the datum that everything is measured off of. I'm going to locate these axle holes both from the back. So I'm choosing, and I'm going to put those dimensions down low. So I'm choosing the lower segment or the lower point, and then that center mark. So that shows me the distance from the back to the rear axle, and then to the more forward run. And notice that I'm putting the longer distance further from the object so that I'm nesting the shorter dimensions in closer. That way, this extension line here doesn't cut across this dimension line. Okay. Now we also need to locate these things vertically as well. So while I know where this point is from the back of the train, where is it from the bottom or the top? The top is not so nice in that it's a curve, so I'm going to use the bottom. That was a nice flat feature. So we're going the bottom to that point, and that's that. Right now we know that these two axle holes actually have the same height. If I just give that one dimension, it's not very clear because there's a whole lot of distance in between them. So I would maybe need to come and also dimension the height of this one, but I'll give you another trick. What if I get the height dimension of this one, but drag it intentionally across the part over here? That might be a way to get a 2-for-1, where this extension line, terminates or kind of ends at that one, but it runs all the way through the other one, making it crystal clear that those are indeed horizontally aligned. So I would suggest that might be a nice thing to do. Okay, so now I've tackled the height of those two. I also need to know the height of this arc. So I'm going to grab from the bottom. I'm using the bottom again as like my baseline or my datum point to there, and I don't need to locate the height of that, right? Okay, so I've located those points. In terms of locating the top of this, we are going to do that in the right view, in the view where I can actually understand that that is a cylindrical shape. We will size and locate that. So I've located center points. The next thing I need to do is I need to size these round features. I don't know how big they are yet. Okay, now this is not a hole, wasn't made with a hole tool, it is a cutout. So I'm going to use the regular dimension tool, just kind of click on the radius and then pull away at a diagonal, and I will get Onshape will automatically give me the radius since it's not a full circle. If it were a full circle, it would give you a diameter like this, but I'm going to hit escape and turn that off. Okay. Now you may think, well, do I need to know where this is, this ledge, or this, like the height of that? And I don't, because if I know the center of this feature, right, where that is, and I now know the radius, right, then this distance here, I know it's a half. So I already know where this is. I didn't explicitly state it with a number, but I would come down from that center mark, a half inch. So from the 1.75 coming down a half inch, this would be at 1.25. And if I went up a half inch, I'd be at 2.25. So that's actually known with a little bit of math. All right, so for the axle holes though, instead of using the regular dimension tool, we're going to use its two tools over what is called the hole callout tool. Okay, now I don't need to put it on all of them, so I'm going to grab this one. It's kind of got a little more white space out here in the open. I'm going to click and just, oh, did it get it? There you go. I'm going to move at an angle. You could go up or down. I think mine's kind of in this way in the canvas example, so I'll put it there again. All right, that gives me a lot more information. This was a tapped hole, so it gives me a diameter, a depth. It gives me the thread, the type of threads, and the depth of the threads. If I double click on this, I have the ability to also type into fields if I want to add some notes. So I could say, oh, hand was in the wrong place. I could go ahead and say this is a tapped axle hole. Just trying to let you guys, I'm using this so you can see that there are fields you can type above, in front, behind, and below the hole note. Behind, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple spaces and then a capital X and 4, and that's going to be a way to note that this information is for 4 different holes. Okay, so I now know the location and the size of the axle holes. I know the location and the size of this cutout. I know most everything I can see in this view. Not everything. I don't actually know the height of this, but we decided that this feature is the top of this round thing, and I can better see and understand what this is in the right view. So I'd rather dimension, size it, and locate it in the view where I can see it straight on as a round feature. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to that right view next. I'm going to turn the dimension tool back on, and let's go ahead and just add that real quick. So if I locate the center mark, now locating it would be with a vertical distance and a horizontal distance. So now I know where the center is, and then I size that feature. Okay, then that would determine exactly where this is. So I have located that center mark and sized the round feature. The arc on top, that one I've already done over here. Okay, so I don't need to do it again. It's the same thing. The only thing I need here, let's see, oh, one more thing from the front view maybe I would point out is kind of not only that, but like where's this ledge? That's the top of the like rectangular prism part of the train, right? It's kind of where's this? Well, again, I better understand the shape and the form in this view, so that's why I didn't dimension it here. So, but I would like to know how high that is, right? So I'm going to dimension from the bottom up to this little ledge and bring that over here. Now, if your dimensions start getting really close and cramped, you should pull them out. Kind of just space them a little bit, grab them and manipulate that. The other thing that I've done that I probably need to do again here is I can control the font size and the arrow tip size, and that sometimes gives me just a little more space. So I did choose to pull out this wrench. I should have done this at the beginning, but I didn't. And under the dimension tab here, I can change the text height and the arrowhead height for all general dimensions. So if I make the text height and the arrowhead, I'm going from 0.08 to 0.06. We'll get just a little smaller, and it gives me the ability to squeeze them in a little bit. Now for the whole note, you notice that did not change. It's still bigger. That is under the next tab, which is annotations or notes, and you have to scroll all the way down to the end to find the hole or thread callout. And there I changed that as well to be 0.06. So just for the scale of the paper and size and everything, I made that font slightly smaller. Okay. So again, from the front view, I now know the height of that. I know the height of that, but I put them in this view because I can better see and understand those forms, what those lines are representing. Okay, now I also need to locate these holes. So I need to locate them both horizontally and vertically. So with my regular dimension tool, I'm going to use this left edge as my baseline. So I'm going to come from the left edge to the first hole. I'm going to come from the left edge. I would have gone to the middle hole, but you know what? That extension line for that goes right through the middle. So I think that's a 2 for 1. So I'm going to skip that one and go to the right. And then again, I will just turn off my dimension tool and maybe respace these. And I'm looking for just neatness and kind of uniform spacing. And if you think a number is squeezed between extension lines, like maybe that one is, you can pull that out and let the number live on the outside. So I've located the 3 holes horizontally, but I also need to locate them vertically. Now these two are horizontally aligned, so kind of like before, I'm going to grab the left one if I'm going to pull this dimension to the right, and that way I get an extension line to run through both. And then I'll go from the bottom to the top one. All right. Now you just always need to be thinking about if your dimensions are in a good place, if they're organized. When you choose to pull a number outside, if it turns and kind of has this little flag, if you will, know that you can flip the direction it goes if you want by clicking the elbow. But this right here would be confusing because that 0.125 is right next to this little arrow and somebody might get confused. So if it's going this way, I certainly need to create some distance to make it a little more obvious that that's going here and not here. Or you can flip it, just, be intentional with where you place things, okay? Always be thinking about if your numbers are clear, what they read, etc. All right, so all of my holes have been located, but they have not been sized, and they are holes, so I'm not going to use the regular dimension tool. I'm using the hole callout tool. And I don't need to put it on all 3, I'll just pick one, and we will add the X3 note by double clicking, coming to the back. I'm going to do 2 spaces, X, capital X3. With these, please make sure that your dimensions aren't going on the border or across the border or anything. If they're not fitting inside, remember to take a step back and look at the big picture and think about spacing. Can you grab a whole view and move it a little bit? You might be able to move your views just to create the space that they need for all your dimensions, okay? So you have the ability to kind of zoom out and look at that big picture. So if I've got enough space in here, right, I can sneak this view this way just a little bit if you're thinking this is getting crowded, to be able to have room to bring this. If you think it's getting crowded on the bottom, then just bring this higher a little bit. Because we used the project tool by moving this one vertically, the right and left should move vertically as well. Okay, if you ever move the front one right or left, the top one should scoot right or left as well with it. So you do have to see that moving this one to the right is going to crowd this gap right here. But please take a step back and be mindful of that. But I have my right view fully dimensioned, my front view fully dimensioned. Stepping back to the left, these dimensions were really just trying to get the overall height. So I hadn't finished over here. What I'm missing is the location of this hole horizontally and the size of that hole. And it is a hole, so I need the hole callout tool as opposed to the regular dimension. So I can choose to go out here, or I could even go this way. And then it's a single hole, so I don't need to add a note. The height of this and this we already discussed over here. That's already known because of the radius, through the radius and the location of the height of the center mark. I would actually know the height of this and this. So that's not something to locate. I now have that arc already, so we're good. Moving on to the top view, our last view. The only feature left to dimension here is this smokestack hole. So I just need a horizontal dimension and a vertical dimension. I chose for this to go off of the front of the train. And I chose to bring that dimension down here. So there's a horizontal dimension, a vertical dimension that locates that point relative to 2 different sides of the train. And it is a hole, so I'm going to use the hole callout feature. And that way I get both diameter and depth. All right, so that tackles all our key features. The very, very last thing would be the detail that we've rounded over all these edges. And so you can grab kind of any corner where you see that little round over. You can kind of zoom in on it. Just grab that and you will get the radius. Now, Instead of just leaving that by itself, I'm going to add some notes. So I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to type above here, fillet, all edges. And then in the bottom, I'm going to put a parenthesis and type except full edges. Okay. That's one way to do it. I will, just so you know, some people will also do it as simple as this. They will have that radius and they will simply put a TYP behind it without even a lot more communication. So TYP stands for typical. You would have to know, through looking at the drawing. Oh, it's okay. That is just a rounded edge. You can see the isometric that you have all these rounded edges. And so this would be saying, hey, this little round over, it is a typical size for all of them to be 1/10 of an inch. All right. I'm going to go ahead and leave mine like that though. And there is your completed train body drawing sheet.